Most routines fail for a simple reason. They ask too much from normal life. They assume clean mornings, perfect energy, no interruptions, and a version of you that always feels ready. That is why the daily 20 loop matters. 20 minutes sounds almost too small to matter, which is exactly why it has a shot at surviving a real day. I tested a lot of AI routines that look smarter than this one. They had more stages, more reflection, more prompts, more setup, and more ways to feel organized. They also broke faster. The Daily 20 works because it is not trying to transform your life in one sitting. It is trying to create one visible win and set up tomorrow a little better than today. The loop is simple: dump the fog, force the next action, draft version 1, lock it into a checklist, save anything that worked. What makes it useful is not the novelty, it is the order. If I start with ideas, I drift. If I start with the next action, I move. That difference changes the whole feel of the session. The first step is the fog dump. Not journaling, not a giant planning ritual, just the current mess. Tasks, pressure, half finished things, loose thoughts, and the stuff I keep mentally reloading every 10 minutes. The point is to get the noise out of my head and into something the model can structure. Once the mess is visible, I can do what it does best: compress, sort, and surface the one thing that matters most right now. That leads to the most important move in the whole routine: forcing the next action, not a list, not a project, one physical step that starts the work. This is where most routines get fake. They say the next step is something like work on the video or clean up the pipeline. Those are containers, not actions. A real next action is write 6 hook lines, export the first rough, send one clean follow up, or build the first column of the sheet. When the action is physical, it becomes much harder to negotiate with yourself. Once the next action is clear, version 1 gets easier, and version 1 matters more than people think. On most days, the blank page is the real enemy. AI is strongest when it kills the cost of starting. It gives me the ugly first draft, the rough checklist, the first email, or the initial structure, so I am working on something real instead of circling the idea of doing the work. Then I turn that rough output into a checklist. This is the part a lot of people skipped, and it is why so many routines fail to compound. A checklist converts one decent session into a reusable sequence. It lowers tomorrow's thinking cost. It gives the next session a cleaner starting point. That is what makes a routine stick. It is not just about finishing today, it is about making tomorrow easier. I also save whatever deserves to survive the day. Good prompts, good hook patterns, good output shapes, good message structures. A daily 20 session should not vanish once the timer ends. It should leave useful residue behind in the form of defaults and templates. That is how a small routine starts acting like a system. What I like most is that the routine does not ask me to feel inspired, it asks me to create motion. That is a much more honest job. Some days the output is a script block, some days it is a cleaner outreach template. Some days it is a repurposed checklist, but the pattern stays the same: visible progress in a short window. The routines that failed usually failed in predictable ways. They asked for too much reflection, they asked for too much planning, or they tried to make AI do everything in one pass. That creates homework. Daily 20 works because it stays small enough to feel doable and structured enough to produce momentum. There's also a deeper reason it sticks. It lowers emotional resistance. A lot of productivity advice ignores that. People think routines fail because they are lazy or undisciplined. More often, routines fail because starting feels expensive. The daily 20 lowers that cost. It says you do not need to conquer the week right now. You need one clean 20-minute loop that ends with something visible. That is why I care so much about time to first artifact. How quickly does the routine get me to a draft, a checklist, a message, a paragraph, or some other concrete thing? If the routine spends 15 minutes warming up and 5 minutes producing, it is backwards. Daily 20 earns its place because it gets to the artifact quickly. Another thing that helps is keeping the questions brutally small. What is the mess? What is the next action? What is version 1? What should become the checklist? What deserves to be saved? Those questions are enough. The more complicated the reflection gets, the easier it becomes to confuse thinking with progress. This routine also works because it respects bad days. A lot of systems are built for high energy days, and then people wonder why they fall apart. Daily 20 can survive a messy Tuesday because it is not dependent on mood. It is dependent on sequence, fog dump, next action, draft, checklist, save. When the order is stable, the session can still work even when the day is not. And the compounding is real. 20 minutes does not sound like much until you realize what it can produce over time. Cleaner prompts, better checklists, more reusable structures, less blank page energy, a stronger habit of ending sessions with something visible. None of that is flashy, but it is exactly what makes output more predictable. The emotional difference is huge too. When you repeatedly finish one small, meaningful thing, you stop feeling like the system is fragile. You trust that you can get traction even on tired days. That confidence matters because consistency is mostly emotional. The easier it feels to start, the more likely you are to repeat it. So if a routine has to earn its place in real life, and this is the test I care about, can I run it on a noisy day and still get a visible result? Daily 20 passes that test. It is not glamorous. It is not loud. It just keeps turning confusion into output, and that is what a routine is supposed to do. The simplest version is easy to run, set a timer, dump the fog, force one physical next action, let AI help create version 1, turn that into a checklist, save anything worth reusing. That is the loop. Small enough to survive, strong enough to compound, boring enough to stick. There's also a measurement angle here that makes the routine much easier to trust. After a week of daily 20, do not ask whether it felt productive. Ask what artifacts exist because of it. How many drafts? How many checklists? How many saved prompts? How many sessions ended with something visible instead of a vague sense of being busy? Those are the signals that matter because they prove the routine is changing output, not just mood. If I were tightening this routine further, I would keep a tiny missed checklist for the bad sessions. Did I dump too much fog and never force a next action? Did I pick a next action that was still too abstract? Did I let the draft stay too broad? Did I skip the checklist? Bad daily. 20 sessions usually fail for simple reasons, and once you know which reason is showing up, the loop gets easier to repair. Another reason the routine sticks is that it respects momentum more than motivation. Motivation is unreliable, momentum is mechanical. Once the first physical action happens, the next two steps feel lighter. That is why I keep caring so much about making the start stupidly small. Small starts are not a weakness, they are how the routine survives real life. I also think people underestimate the value of ending sessions with something reusable. Even when the artifact is small, it still lowers tomorrow's friction. A clean hook pattern, a short follow-up structure, a checklist for the next edit session, a naming convention. Those things do not feel glamorous, but they are exactly what turn one decent week into a smoother next week. The real point is not that 20 minutes is magical. The point is that 20 minutes is realistic enough to repeat. And repetition is what turns AI from a novelty into a compounding system. That is why the daily 20 routine works. It is small enough to survive and structured enough to matter. The practical version is simple. Set the timer, dump the fog, force the physical next action, let AI help create version 1, turn that into a checklist, save anything worth reusing. Then stop. The stopping matters too because it keeps the routine from turning into another bloated system. What surprised me most is that the routine started improving my days long after the 20 minutes were over. Once the next action was chosen and the first artifact existed, the rest of the workday felt less slippery. I was not returning to a blank page. I was returning to momentum. That alone makes the routine stronger than smarter looking systems that spend all their energy on setup,